Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Oh my, I'm starting to sound a bit like Jim Carrey in The Truman Show, aren't I? But wherever you are, uh, I send you my warmest greetings from a very cold, wet Melbourne evening. I'm really delighted to be once again coming out and having a chat to you, and hopefully one or two of you are tuned in. What I'm particularly pleased about being able to speak to you tonight, or one of the things that has pleased me, is that I get to put some lipstick on. Because here in Melbourne, we've been put back into lockdown. And not only lockdown where on those odd times that we do go out, we have to wear a mask. And of course, I've already experimented in wearing a mask and having lipstick on, and it doesn't work. Because all you do is spread the lipstick all over the inside of the mask. So thank you for the opportunity of talking to you live and for the opportunity to put some lipstick on. Yeah, it's pretty sad about what's happened here in Melbourne, where I am. But, we'll get through it. It's a matter of doing what we're told and, yeah, pulling together, being there for each other whenever we're asked or invited to do anything and everything we can. And it's not much right now, is it? But just knowing that somebody is there, a friend, a family member, that's good enough. So hey, I was told the other day that last Saturday, and I'm sorry I didn't get the chance, and I possibly should have alerted you to this fact earlier, but last Saturday was World Listening Day. There you go. We actually have a day on the calendar where we're asked to stop and listen. It's been going for about 10 years. I think this is the 10th year that it's been out there, or whatever the appropriate phrase is, to acknowledge that globally we're going to be having a day. And now initially apparently it was started to encourage people to listen to Mother Nature, to their environment, and listen to the world around them without getting involved in it. And the initial suggestions were go for a walk in a forest, go for a walk on a beach, but be out there and just listen to whatever you hear. That's kind of what I've been talking about and writing about in the Stories of Hope, the whole notion of listening. Can I say right now, the only person who's listening to me, not necessarily obeying me or taking any notice of what I say, is a dog. His name is Diego, and he's right here at my feet right now. I'm dog sitting him for another week or two. And occasionally he listens to me if it involves food, but definitely not when it's time to go outside to do what he's got to do there, or go into the laundry to sleep at night. But hey, it's not about listening to dogs, is it? Or having dogs listen to you. It's about listening. And so let me just talk a little bit more about that. Now, once again, I'm going to always preface what I say with the rider that I am not an expert in any type of counselling, of life coaching, or any way being qualified to be able to talk to you from a professional perspective. I talk to you and I come to you this evening just talking about one human being to another, one ordinary person to another, and how listening has helped me all throughout my life. And I've talked to you about it before in terms of listening to my grandfather, and of course Lully. How can I ever have one of these chats to you without talking about him? But it's more than that. And when I thought about what happens when I listen, and I need to listen, now sometimes you don't. You're in passing conversations and it's enough to just get the gist of what's being said. But it's that whole notion of somebody has engaged with you and it is clear that they want to tell you something, that the first thing you have to do is actually switch off in a way. And I learnt to do that. Oh my gosh, I learnt to do that about a whole manner of things, switch off. Even at times when I shouldn't have been switched off, I should have been well and truly switched on. Talk to my kids about that. But when somebody really wants to talk to you, then you do have to kind of switch off. Because ordinarily, when we're in conversation and when somebody else is doing the talking, Well, what we're often doing is actually just trying to think, well, what's my response going to be to what they're saying? And we're not even hearing everything that's being said because we're frantically trying to come up with my response. How am I going to reply? What's appropriate? How do I really feel about something? And when we're doing that, we're not hearing what's actually being said. Now we can listen in a professional sense, in a work sense. And in that sense, you do have to listen to whoever is perhaps giving you instructions to do something. You know, when you work in a hospital, my goodness, you have to listen to what's being said. Not only by your peers, who could be giving you information which is critical to what you are going to then go on and do or be involved in some other person's life. Because when you work in a hospital, you're always involved in some other person's life. And in a trauma hospital like I worked in, often that involvement had consequences if you didn't do your job properly, and in particular if you didn't listen properly. So you listen to the professional, your colleague, your peer, whoever was giving you instructions or information that you needed to be able to carry out your job properly. But then you also, of course, and the most important thing really was to then listen to the person, the patient, the family member, the friend, who you were then having to speak with and be with, as I said before, in times of often tragedy and trauma. And so listening to them is when you really had to shut down and hear them. Not just the words, of course, but the body language, everything about them. How they spoke to you and how they felt that you listened. Well, that was actually going to determine whether or not you were going to be any damn good at your job and whether or not you were ever going to be able to make a difference to them when they needed you. And I guess I had to learn that, or I learned it, and maybe I had a lot of it intuitively. Growing up, as I think I've said to you before, I came from a background where children were to be seen and not heard, which by default meant that we did a lot of listening. Because nobody really wanted to hear what I had to say growing up. Maybe one or two people, Gramps in particular, but for the most part. So that's when I learnt to listen, I think, and listen to not only what was being said, but the meaning behind what was being said. And I just probably carried that forward through everything I did without even realizing it. But I see now with, say, young people, and here's a classic example. My 3-year-old granddaughter asked her mother the other day for something. She wanted to have something to do, a toy she wanted, and it needed something done to it to play with it. And her mother was busy. And she said, no, not right now, in a minute. But the little girl, she's nearly 4, she kept on and on. She wanted it really bad. And when her mother turned to her and said to her, you're not listening to me, the little girl turned around and said back to her mom, no, Mum, you're not listening to me. Because she felt that she was entitled to be listened to just as much as her mother thought that she should be listened to. Kind of catch-22, isn't it? No one's right and no one's wrong. It's a matter of just being aware of who's asking something of you, who's telling you something. And yes, it may not be an appropriate time to respond to them, but in responding or replying or getting your message across, you need to be able to perhaps say those words that I hope her mom finally got around to saying to her, listen, honey, now is not a good time. I promise when I'm finished doing what I'm doing, we will get on to doing what you want to do. I am listening to you. I have heard what you've said. I just cannot respond to it right now. So that actually has been all about what I've been about, I think, all my life too. There have been so many times, of course, when I have had to say, yeah, not right now. I can't listen to you. I can't hear what you've got to say. And it's one thing to just say, not right now, but that leaves the person hanging, doesn't it? Well, when? And I read this lovely quote, and I think I've actually put it in Stories of Hope and trying to recall it properly. I'm not going to do it justice, but you're going to have to buy my book then and read the exact quote. But it's along the lines of dealing with your children and listening to your children when they tell you the small things. That if you don't listen to them when they're little, because you think what they're saying is inconsequential, not relevant, it's just something little, how can you expect them to then tell you about the big things, particularly when they become teenagers? How can you expect them to now come and talk to you and have you listen to them when you haven't all that time they were growing up? Because guess what? All those little things that they were saying to you when they were 3, 4, 5, 10, they weren't little to them, they were big. And so it comes back to that old, if you want to hear from your children and from your friends and from your family and from anyone that you engage with, you want to hear the big things, then you have to listen to the little things too. I'm sounding a bit preachy, aren't I? But I've learnt this, and I don't always practice it. I know I don't, but I try. And I guess that's all we can expect of each other, isn't it? To try. Now, listening to Lali, listening to my work colleagues, to my peers, to my bosses, and then listening to patients, families, and friends. Well, that was the only way I could get to this point in my life where I felt that I could write this book, Stories of Hope, because I only got those stories because I did listen. Yeah, how can you not listen to somebody when they look you in the eye? They get your attention, they focus. You hear the emotion in their words and their voice. And often it can be with tears, and it can be with a trembling voice. Oh, the number of times Lali spoke to me, and I would have that quiver in his voice, and I'd look at his hands and they'd start to shake. And he had a way of putting his head down and shaking it and just pursing his lips, and he'd go, and I knew what's going to be said next is so incredibly important to him. That was his tell, if I can use that phrase. I think it's from poker or some kind of card game, isn't it? Not that I play them, but I know that we have this thing apparently called a tell. I don't know what mine is. If anybody does know, please let me know so I can be aware of it. But I knew what it was in Lali, and I think I knew what it was in my children too. I didn't always recognise it, but there were always little things that kind of went, oh, hang on a minute here, Heather. Back up, focus. It's time to listen to what's being said to you. So listening, and World Listening Day. Oh, I think that's now a ripper. I think it's marvellous. And maybe this time next year, leading up to it, maybe a more appropriate time for me to somehow engage with you and get from you by way of comments or messages. I'll put out a thing on my Facebook. Tell me your secrets. What is it you do to listen? How do you listen? And let's try and get some of those ideas and those different ways of doing it. Because, hey, mine's just one way. It's what works for me. It's that focus, look at, clear my mind, and it becomes obvious. And don't try if the person, I tried this a couple of times with Lali and it didn't work. As I said, he would often put his head down when he wanted to tell me something that was deeply emotional to him. And sometimes I'd kind of go like this. I'd be trying to, well, can I look at your face? Can I see your eyes? Can I try and see anything? Wow, big mistake, big mistake. Sit back a bit. Let him get to that point of you being, well, me, being silent and not moving. And sure enough, within a moment or two, he'd need to look up to see how I was responding and how I was hearing him. And he would, and I'd just give him the smallest of smiles and a little nod of the head. And the head would come up a little bit more and a little bit more until he was looking at me totally. and engage with me. And he knew at that point that whatever he was saying, I was hearing it 100%. Of course, part of the problem was that sometimes he was saying it in a language I didn't understand. And there were the times when he'd be saying names of his time in Auschwitz-Birkenau, particularly using names of SS and places which I'd never heard before. And I'm having to try and take them on board. I needed to remember what he was saying to me, remember so that I could write it down and then try and find something that resembled what it was I thought I'd heard. And hearing names of SS officers and places, trust me, in a language and a delightful Eastern European accent that was foreign to me, that wasn't always easy. My job was to do the best I could to listen, however. Now, when it comes to listening to other stories, wow, I'm told, and I can only presume it's correct, that the other stories, and I have so many that have been asked of me to write. Yes, I am writing one, and I've already told you about it. It's the story of the beautiful three sisters from Slovakia. And Pam and Odette, if you're tuned in Toronto and Canada, big hi to you. But the others, the ones that I may hopefully get to write some as well after this one, I've been given them. I'm told by those people who are asking me to do this, because they have felt comfortable enough in the brief meetings I've had with them, and in the emails. You know, you can let somebody know you're listening by how you even respond to their emails. And they've told me that they like the way I have listened to them and heard their story, and which is why they are now still wanting me to tell it, to write it, to research it, to spend more time with them. And I guess it's a matter of staying on this Mother Earth long enough to do just that. I'm planning on it. And to be able to do that, it means I do have to stay in lockdown. I do have to not wear my lippy every day. And when I do go out, make sure I'm masked up. And trust me, my going out is very, very rare. It literally is for the essentials, to be able to buy some food for the house and for, well, the dog. He's running out. I might have to go out. But that 2 to 3 times a week, and making sure that I keep my distance. Because, hey guys, I do not want this. I do not want this COVID-19, the coronavirus, or as my little granddaughter calls it, the bug. I don't want it. And so I'm going to look after myself and protect myself so I can get back out there and listen to you. And maybe 1 or 2 you might listen to me. But in the meantime, I am delighted to say that today I was told that, well, first of all, Cilka's Journey, my beloved story of Cilka, will be coming out in September in the UK and in the US in its paperback version. And today I saw the covers and have already approved them so that can happen, and they now will go to the printers. But more importantly, maybe not, equally as important, today I looked at, again, the covers for Stories of Hope. We're fiddling with it, but not just the cover, but the inside, because there's going to be photos in there. Photos of, well, there's a couple there of me and of Lully and of others, and they're photos that relate to the stories that are in Stories of Hope. And today we've just been looking and considering which one of these photos, the many that I have, that we shall put in the book. And so I think my publishers are going to listen to me with my suggestions of which ones. I've tried to keep the ones that have me in them to a minimum, if that's okay with you. Though I have agreed to one, and it's really daggy. Look, it's about the only one I really have of me as a child. Gosh, I imagine I'm somewhere about 10, and I'm sitting on a step with 3 of my 4 brothers. And to Brother Stuart, I'm so sorry you're not in that photo, but you weren't born. And it was the only photo I could find that had 3 of my 4 brothers in it with myself. Taken many, many decades ago. And I look like I'm listening to whatever's been asked of me when the photo's been taken. Who knows? It was one of the unfortunates of that time, wasn't it? That not many photos did get taken. Well, if they did, I don't know what happened to them. But now we have so many, and you can look at photos of people too. And can't you just see in those photos, you can hear stories, you can see emotion, you can see what may have just happened, be it good, bad or indifferent, to that person just prior to that snap being taken. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, as World Listening Day has just passed us by, we are not going to let another one pass us by. As listening, I have written about, and I am putting it out there. It actually is the most important thing that we can do to maintain relationships, to be able to bond with people, even strangers who may not become strangers. That I never realized it until I started getting all these amazing emails from everybody, how important listening was. Such a simple concept. So look, that's really all I want to say, because going on and over the same thing is not what you want to hear. Just know that I send my best wishes to everybody out there that takes the time to watch this. I hope wherever you are that you are staying safe, you're staying inside, you're wearing your masks, you're doing whatever is required of you. Because guess what? The most important thing, the most important people I am listening to right now, and you may or may not agree with it, but I am actually listening to the people who govern the state and the country that I live in. I am listening to them. I may not necessarily vote for them, but right now I do believe they have not only my best interests, but the country's best interests at heart. And the measures they are taking, even though they are unpalatable and I'm not crazy about them, I am listening to them because they're important and they matter, because they're going to get me back out there to you. So I know not all of you will possibly want to listen to the advice of your leaders, and that's fine too. Then listen to your gut. Listen to those people who do matter in your lives. I'm lucky I live in a country where what we're being asked to do and what we're being asked to listen to, I think is the right thing. I'm going to keep on listening to whoever will choose to speak to me. And I hope that you can find something in listening to somebody, a friend, a family member, a stranger, and hey, learn something new. Even if you don't, you will have made a difference if that person believes they will listen to. Keep listening. I'll be back with you in 2 weeks' time, and let's have another chat. All the best. Good night. Good morning. I'm not going to do it again. I'm just going to send you all my very, very best wishes and love.